G'day, I'm Kevin Humphreys. I'm the guy who created Cor Infinitus, or Infinite Courage. I'm a Army veteran. I was in Army aviation for 20 years, flying Black Hawk and Chinook helicopters. I spent most of my time in the 5th Aviation Regiment in Townsville, and spent some time overseas doing humanitarian work in Papua New Guinea, as well as operational deployments in East Timor, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Towards the end of my time in the Army, the wheels came off for me, and I, through a combination of PTSD, depression, and anxiety, ended up getting to the point of considering taking my life. Needless to say, it was a really crappy time for me and a lot of people around me. When I got to the point where I was going to do it, I collapsed and had a breakdown. It took me 9 months to get back to work. And when I did, thankfully, I was able to get back to work, get my medical back, and get back to flying, although I never flew in the Army again. But I've since spent the last 10 years flying civilian search and rescue helicopters as a flight instructor and a flight examiner. Cor Infinitus came about because I was in Townsville for work flying the rescue chopper, Anzac Day last year. And a mate of mine who was in my squadron, was with me in Afghanistan, one of the pilots. He took his own life in December 2019, just before Christmas. And that hit me pretty hard. And I've no doubt that everybody watching this has first or second hand experience of someone they know or someone they know of that has served our country and taken their own life. So that Anzac Day, as we know, it was a COVID Anzac Day, so no marches or anything. But the next day I went down to the Memorial Gardens and the Cenotaph in Townsville and spent some time reflecting on my life, on the lives of all those that we've lost in service, and indeed on the lives that we've lost after service. And it was whilst I was there, I came across an A5 sized funeral service booklet. It was sitting on the ground with a rock on each corner, holding it down. And it was for a Private Bradley Carr, an infantry soldier. He'd taken his life on Anzac Day the year before. I had never met Bradley. I didn't know him. But he was 34 when he died, and I was 35 when I almost took my life. And it hit me that we really need to do better than this. Our families, our loved ones that are left behind, deserve some dignity and respect for their loved ones. Those that we've lost that have served deserve dignity and respect. And so I set about at that point to put a memorial into Townsville dedicated to those that have served our nation and taken their lives. The support I got was just amazing. Every ex-service organisation in Townsville was on board straight away, no questions. The mayor and the entire city council was on board. The federal member, Phil Thompson, was immediately on board. And together we went from idea or concept through to getting the plaque on a concrete plinth in about 4 months. And then we unveiled it on World Suicide Prevention Day, the 10th of September last year. And I'll show you some pictures of that in a minute. So the purpose of this presentation is to tell you about Cor Infinitus and to seek your help in getting a Cor Infinitus memorial in every city and town around the country by 2025. The aim is to establish memorials throughout the country dedicated to those that have served our nation and taken their own life. And there's 4 objectives. 1 is to provide dignity and respect to those people. Secondly, to publicly acknowledge the loss and provide the families with dignity and respect, whilst also providing them a tangible place to go and reflect. Also, this is about preventing further suicides, as well as creating conversations to destigmatise mental illness and suicide. So Cor Infinitus, it's Latin for infinite courage. I'm not going to read through this whole slide. It's pre-recorded, so you can pause the video and read this slide. But in essence, cor is Latin for heart, and it's actually the root word for courage. And as it says there, the original meaning of courage was to speak one's mind by telling all one's heart. And infinitus is infinite or boundless or endless. So I think you'll agree with me that when you read through all that, the families need infinite courage, and that's where the name came from. The symbology that I created is watercolour, because I believe it embodies the compassion and care that we need to offer the families. The infinity loop is gold, because the person who's gone really was and still is valued by all those around them. They just couldn't see it. It's torn and frayed to show the internal turmoil that just couldn't be beaten. And the sprig of rosemary through the middle is to show that the military is still with them. Now, as I was putting Cor Infinitus together, I wanted a set of guiding principles to help me stay true to my course, to bring dignity and respect. And so that was the first guiding principle, of course, and that is that everything that Cor Infinitus is about, everything that it does, is to be around dignity and respect. If there's any part of what Cor Infinitus does, or any person representing Cor Infinitus that doesn't bring dignity and respect, then it's not welcome. It is to be a place for families to mourn and grieve and hope and heal. And really importantly, because it's for the families, it has to be informed by them. And I'll come to some of their feedback in a minute. But Cor Infinitus also was not to represent any individual person, era or circumstance. Suicide comes about because of a great number of reasons. PTSD is one, but it is not the only one. And so Cor Infinitus is completely anonymous and inclusive, and it covers all conflicts, all eras of service, all of our people and all circumstances. And what it's about is really important. But what it's not about is almost as important, and that is we are not here to glorify the person's final act to take their own life. Not at all. This is about preventing further suicides. And so with all of that together, it's important to understand that Cor Infinitus memorials are not owned by ESOs, they're not owned by me, they're not owned by any individual. They're owned by all of us collectively. They're owned by the families, they're owned by the local community. In essence, the Cor Infinitus memorials say to the families, we see you, we hear you, you're not alone, we're all here together. I've learned a lot as I was going through this, putting Cor Infinitus together, and I had a lot of a really incredible and generous contribution from a number of different parties, private individuals as well as organisationally. And in particular was the clinical oversight that I received from psychologists at Open Arms and Mates for Mates and the North Queensland Primary Health Network. And the reason for this was quite simply to make sure that Cor Infinitus memorials are as psychologically safe as they can possibly be. The notion of a memorial to suicide is a real double-edged sword. A memorial in and of itself to suicide is not seen as a positive step towards suicide prevention at all. So the wording, every piece of the wording and the collective memorial itself has all received oversight from these organisations. And what's being put together is believed to be as psychologically safe as we can make it. Unfortunately, there is no guarantee, but it is as psychologically safe as we can make it. And I will emphasise this point a couple of times throughout the rest of the presentation. And lastly, and this is the important piece for you, my ambitious goal is to have a Cor Infinitus memorial put in every city and town around the country by 2025. I can't do that alone, nor do I want to attempt to be involved in every single Cor Infinitus memorial around the country to try to get it up and running. This is where you come in. It's a decentralised approach that I want to create. I need to find you as a local champion to find your local cenotaph in your suburb or your town, identify the location, look at gaining funding. There is funding available through various grants, be it federal and state and even local level grants, to get the pay for the plaque or the concrete and whatnot. And depending on what you choose, it could be anything from a couple of $1,000s through to about $5,000 or $6,000. Consult with the stakeholders. Depending on the location, it might be council land, it might be privately owned, it might be owned by an ESO. Consult with the stakeholders, get the local approvals in place, and then look to get the plaque, the memorial, the plinth up and running. There's 3 parts to the memorial I'll go through shortly, and importantly, the wording is not to be altered. It comes back to the point about psychological safety. And whilst the wording is fixed, the shape, the size, the colour, all of that is totally up to you. So if you want it on brass or on copper, if you want it to be A4 portrait or landscape or square, if you want it on a stone plinth or a concrete plinth or a wall mount, it's totally up to you, depending on where you're going to put it. But it all requires local action by local champions, and that's what I'm hoping you'll be. So the family feedback and input that I spoke about, essentially there were 3 main parts. Firstly, that the memorial is to be located with other casualties of service. It's not to be isolated or secluded. So if you've got a main cenotaph with other plaques or other things around it, families don't want Cor Infinitus Memorial put 500 metres away around the back in the corner of the park. They want it somewhere situated with the other casualties of service. Again, this is about dignity and respect. The preferred symbology on the plaque, because it really honestly means a lot to the families. And the wording on the veteran plaque reads this: dedicated to all those who've served our nation and were overwhelmed by the battle within, lest we forget. Now the asterisks at the top and down the bottom there, having spent 10 years in the emergency services, I can well and truly empathise with what they go through as well. And so Cor Infinitus, I intend on expanding Cor Infinitus to include the emergency services community, not just the veteran community. The family guidance and feedback that I've got so far has only come from veteran families. So I will be getting feedback from emergency services families as well. And the wording on their plaques may be slightly different, or there may be some other variation, I don't know yet. But all the family feedback I've got so far is all from veteran families. Now, messages of hope. What this is about is in relation to the psychological safety. A plaque that is dedicated to people who have taken their own life, as I said earlier, is seen as a real double-edged sword. So in order to make it more safe, as I said, there's no guarantees, unfortunately, but in order to make it more safe, what we've done is put 2 additional plaques, and they can be signs if you want instead of plaques. Again, it depends on the location. One is messages of hope, and the other one is messages of help. Messages of hope, in considering what this was going to be, I reflected on who can bring hope. How does hope come to someone who's vulnerable? Who can bring that hope? And I reflected firstly on my life. My wife and my kids were a huge part of why I stayed here. And on top of that, there's parents, of course. There's also mates. And indeed, there's those who have attempted to take their own life, but either not succeeded or didn't go through with it. And so I've got 5 people who have been directly, personally impacted by suicide to write a short message to put with the dedication plaque in order to encourage people who are vulnerable, standing there looking at it, to seek help and seek life. And they're all here. And again, I'm not going to read them all. I'll let you pause the video and then you can go through and read them all. But these are all real words from real people, and each of them individually is quite powerful, and collectively they're an incredibly inspirational and hopeful message for someone who's vulnerable standing there looking at the memorial. So there's 3 essential parts to the Cor Infinitus Memorial that I mentioned. First is the memorial plaque, or the dedication plaque itself. Secondly is the messaging of hope and help. So the 5 messages that you just read, as well as help numbers. 000, Lifeline, Kids Helpline, and Open Arms, for example. Now, as it says there, they can be in the form of plaques next to the dedication plaque, or they might be a sign that's right behind it. The method is not as important as the location of them. They must be within eyeshot of the memorial plaque. And the third part is what I call Cor Infinitus signage. And even though we know that we're talking about suicide, we know what this is about. It is possible that someone comes across these plaques for the first time, and they may not be completely aware of what it is we're talking about. So the Cor Infinitus sign is just to explain really what the memorial is about. And although ideally that should be within eyeshot, you may place it somewhere else, and I'll show you an example of that. So here's the memorial in Townsville that was unveiled in September last year. You can see the row of plinths, and so it was appropriate to make this one the same size, shape and type of plinth. And the plaque was also the same type of plaque to then align with all the previous ones. Here we have the messaging of hope and help. You can see on the left and the right the two plaques. Now, unfortunately, we didn't have those plaques ready at the unveiling. We just couldn't get them done in time. However, they are installed now, and all future Cor Infinitus memorials, there shouldn't be a problem in having all three plaques unveiled at the same time. And this is the signage in Townsville. So you can see in the background the row of low plinths, and then in the foreground that large sign of the Anzac Way Memorial, and you can see the Cor Infinitus sign. It's about an A3 size there. It's got a picture of, in this case, the plinth. So have a picture on it of whatever your memorial is, so that if it's not right next to it, people can identify what this Cor Infinitus sign is about. They go, oh, that picture, that's the same as that plaque over there, and they can instantly connect the two. So this one here is brand new. This one here was unveiled on Sunday the 18th of April, and of course this series of this video that I'm making here is for the Veteran Wellbeing Summit, starting on the 19th of April. So this is a sneak peek at the Cor Infinitus Memorial in Currumbin. You can see there the location on a beautiful low stone wall overlooking the river there at Currumbin, and that's a closer shot of it. So yeah, it's turned out beautifully there. As you saw, two of the aims for Cor Infinitus was suicide prevention and to continue to destigmatise mental illness and suicide. So one of the ways that I'm going about this is that I created some lapel pins. So there's something physical that we can all take with us. We can't take the memorial with us, but we can take the lapel pin with us and wear that on Anzac Day, Remembrance Day, any other day or time that you want to. And the lapel pins are the Cor Infinitus symbol. So there's two types, one with it embossed on a white background, that oval shape on the left, and then a cutout of the symbol itself on the right. They come on a card which has the meaning of Cor Infinitus and the symbology, as well as you can see there, the dedication itself. And that middle photo is the outside of the card with the website on the back. So these pins are available for ESOs to purchase at cost, so that ESOs can then sell them at retail to help with their fundraising. So to give you an idea, they sell for $2.50 and $3 each, and you can then sell them for $5 or whatever you want to get for them. And all the money that you raise, so the original cost is to cover my costs, that's it. And then whatever price you sell them for, you keep the difference as part of your fundraising. But it allows us to, as I said, to have conversations around mental illness, because people obviously be fairly new to them. What's this badge about? And then you can start that conversation. So where next? Well, Townsville and Currumbin are done. From there, I want to install what I'm calling a symbolic catafalque party, north, south, east and west around the country, so that they can stand guard for our families whilst we fill in the map. You can see there's a bunch of individual inquiries that are there, everything from a place called Doyleson in New South Wales to Kuranda in Queensland. Just outside of Adelaide is looking to adopt Cor Infinitus across their council area. So I need your help to make the dream a reality of putting a Cor Infinitus memorial in every city and town around the country within the next 4 to 5 years. Finally, some points that I'd like to raise. Firstly, on the DIY. I've received a couple of emails that are really quite humbling to say, Kev, what you're doing is really inspirational, and we'd like to, we've already started the process of a Cor Infinitus memorial here. And I asked them what files are they using, and for the symbol to send that off to to get the plaques made and that kind of stuff. So, we're just taking screenshots of your PDFs and we'll make it happen. And that's great, and I'm really humbled by that. The question I've got is to make sure that it's high quality, to make sure that the wording is correct, because one of the emails said, oh, indeed, we've tweaked it a little bit. I said, tweaking is not okay, and I'll come to that point again at the end. But the bottom line is here, folks, you don't need to make it up. You don't need to take screenshots. I will give you all the files. Yes, that Cor Infinitus name, the symbol, and the files that I'll provide are copyrighted, but I will give them to you for free. You don't have to make it up. I want Cor Infinitus in 15, 17,000 places around the country, but I want to make sure we do it right. There are a number of other memorials to suicide out there already that I wasn't aware of until I started down the road of creating Cor Infinitus. And I have every respect for all of those memorials that are there. But we've created Cor Infinitus with the oversight of Open Arms, Mates for Mates, and the North Queensland Primary Health Network in a very structured and deliberate way. And I would encourage you that if you want to create a Cor Infinitus memorial, that you do it how we have intended it to be created. You don't have to make it up. And the only thing I would say about the use of the files and the use of the Cor Infinitus name and the symbology is that it is only used for the purpose that it's intended, that is to create the memorials. The files, the symbol, all the rest of it are not to be used for any other purpose without permission. Next is, I've heard a number of people refer to it as Cor Invictus. It's not, it's Cor Infinitus. And lastly is to come back to this point about psychological safety. I cannot emphasize it enough. This has all received oversight. The wording is there for particular reasons to make it as psychologically safe as we can. Do not alter the wording, and all three parts of the memorial, the dedication plaque, the messaging of hope and help, and the Cor Infinitus sign are all important and they're all required. So in closing, if you want to get in contact with me, then please, the blue down the bottom there is my email, the website, and the Facebook group. Feel free to come and join. And the meta prayer there is what I offer to families whenever I do a presentation around Cor Infinitus or an unveiling. And I like to think of it that the families have offered their words through the messages of hope to those that are gone and those that are vulnerable. And these are my words that I'm offering to you. May you be at peace. May your hearts remain open. May you awaken to the nature of your own true light. May you be healed. And may you be a source of healing to all beings. Thank you.